Hello and welcome to yesterday's Airlines for another exclusive video courtesy of my friends at ngmodels. Now, just about a week ago, NG told me that they were sending me a box of model samples. And you probably got the plural there. Yes, samples, not sample, samples, and lots of samples. And I was stunned because NG's capacity to produce new models and new mold samples is just unbelievable in comparison to any of the other brands that are out there. I've never seen any of the manufacturers produce the number of molds that NG are producing in that same quality and quantity over such a short period. And why am I down here in the Yesterday's Airlines kitchen? Well, that's because my hangar is full of mold samples and I just haven't got any space to do this video. So this video is going to be a look through what these new mold samples could possibly be, and then the announcement of those samples. So if you're bored already and you don't want to see the preamble, then jump to the end of the video for the announcement. But I thought, as I've done previously when I've had the pleasure of being able to announce NG models, mold samples, that I would have a little bit of a talk beforehand about, what is available to make. Now, as you can see by the collection of models that are in view here, the new mold samples are a narrow body, and a narrow body with less than 4 engines. So I apologise to everyone in advance who was hoping these would be 747 Classics. They are not. And they're also not DC-8s or 707s. But there's still a big selection of possibilities. Even though NG have been producing mold samples at quite an astonishing rate, there's still plenty to be done, as can be seen by the models sitting in front of me here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a look through these different types and talk about their possibilities for being the new mold sample from NG models. Now, these are just the latest mold samples that NG have sent me. I've been getting mold samples from NG now for over 4 years, since back in 2018. I think the 737-800s were the first samples they've got me, and they've sent me every single sample that they've ever produced since then. So I want to say an enormous thank you to NG Models for having the trust in me, firstly. But also, if you're not subscribing to my channels, my Instagram channel, my Facebook channels, or here on the YouTube videos, then WTF are you doing? Because obviously this is a great place to find out what is going on with NG Models, who are obviously and clearly the most exciting brand in 400 scale at the moment, with the range and the quality of models that they are producing. So let's start having a look at what we've got here and check out what these new samples could be. Okay, so first up, we've got the MD80 series, and there's obviously plenty of range for different variants with the MD80. You've got the standard body, 81, 82, 83, 88, the short body 87s, and then slightly lengthened up into the MD90-30, and of course the MD95/717. And there's an enormous lack of MD80s in 400 scale, as I've discussed many times before. It's a mold type which is crying out to be made, and even though there's some really nice examples like this Dragon Wings example, which dates pretty much from 2001, I think. There's a bucket load of MD80s that have never been made, really obvious ones like SAS and Alitalia, and a huge market, I think, for producing a really good, up-to-date MD80 mold, seeing as Gemini just don't use their mold at all, and frankly, it's not the greatest mold anyway. In fact, it's probably inferior to this one. So I'd love an MD80. I think the MD80 series has got enormous potential. Unfortunately, even though I've been banging on to NG about it, it is not an MD80 this time around. So hopefully that will be a mold for the future, but not an MD80. So if it's not an MD80, could it be its predecessor, the DC9 standard series? No, it isn't. And that's probably just as well, because even though this isn't an Aero Classics version, this is an SMA mold on this Austrian DC950 here, it is the Aero Classics mould is nigh on perfect, and they've done a huge number of these. So I'm not enormously feeling the need for a DC9, at least not a longer version of it. I would love to see some short body DC9s. That is a mould which desperately needs redoing, and there's a huge potential there, again, much like the MD-80, for producing a wide range of classic short nines on, you know, in a really good selection of liveries from Europe and North America, and then also into South America and even Africa and places like that. So the DC9 short series is definitely one which should be up there, high on the list of manufacturers to produce, but it's not this time around, so it's not a DC9 either. So could it be the 737 Classic? NG have shown a lot of interest in the 737 recently, obviously with their new next generation moulds. They don't have a MAX, they don't have Classics. Could they be this time around? Could it be their turn? There's certainly a lot of room for new 737-300s, even though Aero Classics has produced quite a decent number, like this TAP one here on a good mould, which is the Panda mould, which has actually been updated, but Panda don't use too much. And Panda have their 737-400, which is exceptional. Really, they're not using it as they ought to be, and jcwings persists in using its older 300 and 400 and 500 moulds, which are okay, but never going to set the world on fire. So there's a lot of potential, I think, for 737, 300, 400, 500. There's a huge untapped area there, much like the MD-80. For some reason, 1980s, 90s narrow bodies seem to be largely ignored. But much like the DC-9s, it is not the time for the 737 Classics, or indeed the MAX, and the new moulds do not feature the baby Boeing. So on to large regional jets. Maybe you can't even call them regional jets anymore, they're getting so large. But here we've got, on the left, we've got the Embraer E-Jet series, and on the right we've got what was the Bombardier C series, but is now obviously the Airbus A220s. These moulds, again, they're not perfect by a long margin, and they're also quite underused. There's significant potential in the E-Jet area for new releases. For the A220 series, I think there's significant future sales, which must surely open up a good range of model possibilities in the coming years. I have to say that NG so far has not shown a lot of interest in producing regional jets in 400 scale, and they've tended to focus on 200 scale for these smaller aircraft types. I think that could change, and with the rate they're producing moulds, perhaps it's inevitable, but it isn't the new moulds that they've sent me here. So no E-Jets or A220s, but it really wouldn't surprise me to see at least the A220s in the future from NG. Now, jcwings have an outstanding BAC 111-500 mould, as you can see here on this lovely British European example, and once again, they just don't really use it. So there's, I did a wish list, there's a bucket load of wonderful 111s, admittedly most of them British, which could be done on this exceptional mould, and since JC aren't going to use it, you know, there's potential for someone else to nip in and steal that market away, but I don't think that NG have really got a 111-500 on their radar, unfortunately, and so we're just going to have to keep on hoping that jcwings pull their finger out and start actually using this spectacular 111-500 mould, because it's not the mould which NG have sent me through this time around. So we're whittling down the contenders here for the new moulds that NG could have sent through. And we're moving Dutch here with the Fokker 100 and I guess potentially the Fokker 70 and even the F28 series. Again, at least the 100's really, really underused mould. It's a great mould from JC Gemini. They just don't use them, again, even though there's great potential. There's a lot of good European airlines that use the type in later life. There's even lots that used it as launch customs, like Swissair, which have never been made. And even in the States, you've got potential for re-releasing types like this American Airlines. It got good sales generally globally, and it got a lot of use on the seconds market too. So Fokker 100s have been in service up until quite recently in quite a lot of places. But once again, it's on the smaller end of the scale. I would not tend to call the Fokker 100 a regional jet, but it's probably smaller than an A220, so it's just the area you come from, I guess, as to what you consider to be an RJ. But NG haven't shown a lot of interest at this very lower end of the 400 scale size wise, and once again they're not here, so it's not a Fokker 100. Okay, the Boeing 727. Now, NG have recently produced a Tupelo T154, so they obviously understand the interest around tri-jets, and the 727 sold a shitload more than the 154 did, so there is an almost endless number of 727s that could be made. Aero Classics have got 100 and 200 molds that they use quite a bit, and they've produced a huge number of 727s over the years. However, the molds are a little long in the tooth. Certainly this 100 mold has been showing some aging in terms of getting the parts to fit correctly, and obviously both it and the 200 could be improved by removing the seams and adding extra details like, hey, aerials. But you know, jcwings has also got a 200 mold, and they are using it occasionally on and off, but not radically and not regularly, I would say. So there is potential here for new 727s. I can't say I'm overly excited by that because I've got hundreds in my collection already from the aforementioned manufacturers, and they're all reasonably good. But I know lots of people would be excited for more 727s. It's not high on my list, I admit, and it doesn't seem like it's particularly high on ngmodels list either because it is not a 727. So that basically rules out a load of potential aircraft that ngmodels could have produced as their next set of mould samples. So let's get upstairs and check out what it is they have produced. So I'll see you in a few seconds. Welcome back to this video where we're about to announce the very latest ngmodels mould samples. I've moved up to the yesterday's Airlines hangar, or at least Terminal 1 in the hangar, and as you can see, got my models on display. And there's quite a lot of them, as you can tell. Now, the first thing I want to say before we announce the molds is, as always, there's going to be some people who are disappointed by what it is that NG have made this time around, and I know there'll also be a lot of people who are super excited about what they've produced, and that just comes with the territory, I guess. NG can't make everything, or can they? And at the same time, they've got their own priorities, which aren't necessarily the same as every single individual collector out there. So, you just got to kind of take the hits or take the pluses. There's always something cool about any of the samples they're producing, no matter what they are. There's always a lot of potential, I find. So I was surprised, but not too surprised, when NG finally told me what it was that they were sending me the other day. It's actually the first time they've done that. Usually I just open the box and get surprised at that moment in time. But what did slightly give it away was when they told me literally how many samples they were sending me. NG told me they were sending me 13 samples of new models. Now, one of them is not too surprising. It's a sample of something which they've already sent me a sample of before, but we've not actually seen in production. So I'll just move that one up in the camera. It is a re-sampled 737-600. So I'll be taking a look at this 737-600 next week. It should be an update on the previous one they sent me, which had the wrong wings and didn't quite have the correct rear portion of the fuselage. So that should be broadly similar, you'd have thought, to the rest of their next generation 737 series. But that is not the main aspect. That's only one of the 13 molds, and the other 12 they relate to, drum roll please, and I'll just bring you down to the display area where I've literally just got these molds out the box a little bit earlier. Here we go. The new mould samples from ngmodels, which will be on the market very soon by the sound of things, are the Airbus A320 family. And as you can see here in this picture, we've got a lot of samples. Now you can see I've also got some other existing molds out from other brands, because I'm just starting to have a look through and see how things appear. But what we have, and why we've got 12 samples, is we've got A320s with all 4 engine options. We've got the CFMs, the IAEs, and both the Neo options, and obviously wings with both winglets and without. We've got the A319 with all 4 engine options, the CEOs and the NEOs. And this is surprising, we've got a new Airbus A321 mould. Now, ngmodels have been using the HYJL wings mould, which they produced for HYJL wings, and to be honest, it's far and away the best mould in 400 scale for the A321, except possibly for the Panda mould, which is slightly different. But what they've actually done here, from a quick look, is they've engineered new A320 and A319 moulds, and then they've engineered an A321 off the back of those. So you can see when you look at them closely that the A321 contains the characters or characteristics of the A320 and A319 moulds, as it should do, except obviously with the proper wings. So that's just stunning, you know. Whether it was really needed, I don't know, but it shows a real, real ability and a real interest in getting things right, because they've already got pretty much the best A321 on the market. So that's just, you know, impressive for me. But there we have it. We've got 4 A320 versions, 4 A319s, and 4 A321s. As you can see, one of the A321s has a minor nose gear breakage. I'll try and fix that up. But what I'll be doing is I will be posting the usual selection of reviews and video reviews, written and video reviews, over the next week to have a look at these molds in detail. As I understand it, ngmodels will have at least one variant of each at the London Gatwick Aviation Fair, which is this Sunday, May 22nd. I'm not going to be there, but somebody will be there with some of these mold samples. And as you can tell by the fact that they've already got the windows on them and they're looking pretty much complete, they are near ready, and I believe that NG will be announcing some models using some of these molds in their next set of releases, so keep an eye out for that as well. But obviously I will be doing my usual detailed analysis of these molds over the next week or so, so keep an eye out for that. Subscribe to all my channels, and thanks very much for watching. Thank you very much again, ngmodels, for trusting me and sending me these samples and allowing me to exclusively announce your new mold samples. And I'll see you guys very soon for more of this kind of material at yesterday's Airlines. Thanks very much for watching.